Will you marry me? The question, spoken with the calm authority of a queen, cut through the noise of the bustling street. A gleaming onyx sedan had just pulled up to the curb outside the Metro Mart, and from it emerged Ilara, the architect of the tech empire Innovatex. She was a legend, a woman carved from ambition and success, her presence turning every head. But she wasn't looking at the cameras or the crowd. Her gaze was fixed on a man huddled against a stack of empty crates. That man was Kale. He was a ghost on the sidewalk, a fixture of forgotten things. His coat was a map of hardship, his beard a tangled nest of sorrow. He looked up, his eyes clouded with confusion. People like Ilara didn't see people like him. Yet she stood before him, her question hanging in the air. He finally found his voice, a rasp of disbelief and dignity. "If you truly mean that," he said, his words slow and deliberate, "go into that market, buy a ring, come back, and ask me on one knee." A murmur of shock rippled through the onlookers. Who was this beggar to give a billionaire conditions? But Ilara didn't flinch. She simply turned, walked into the market, and returned minutes later with a diamond ring that burned with cold fire. Without hesitation, right there on the dusty pavement, the titan of technology knelt before the forgotten man. "Kale," she said, her voice now a low, urgent whisper that held a universe of unspoken reasons. "Will you marry me?" He stared down at her, at this impossible, beautiful woman who saw something in his ruin. A slow nod was his only answer. As she slid the ring onto his finger, he knew this wasn't charity. It was a move in a game he didn't understand, and he had just become the most important piece on the board. The ride in Ilara's car was a journey between worlds. The silence inside was a stark contrast to the city's chaos, the scent of leather replacing the grime of the streets. Kale sat stiffly, his ragged bag a foreign object in the pristine interior. He was an anomaly, a glitch in Ilara's perfect world, and he felt it in his bones. She drove with a serene focus, offering no explanations, asking no questions. Her silence was not unkind, but it was absolute. She parked outside a sleek glass building with the words Elysian Studio etched in gold. "First, we restore your dignity," she said, her tone gentle but firm. Inside, the staff's polite smiles faltered as they saw Kale, but a single look from Ilara sent them into motion. "He's with me," was all she needed to say. For the next hour, Kale was not just cleaned, he was carefully unearthed. Years of neglect were clipped, washed, and scrubbed away. The overgrown beard that had hidden his face vanished, revealing a sharp jawline and high cheekbones. His matted hair was styled, and his tired skin was soothed. He felt like an archaeologist's discovery, being brushed clean to reveal the form that lay beneath. When they handed him a mirror, he didn't recognize the man staring back. The eyes were his, haunted but intelligent, but the face belonged to a stranger, a man from another life. A tailored suit, a crisp shirt, and polished shoes completed the transformation. When he stepped out, Ilara stood up, a slow, satisfied smile gracing her lips. "There you are," she said softly, as if greeting an old friend she knew was there all along. Kale said nothing. He was looking at a ghost, and he wasn't sure if it was the man he was or the man he used to be. Ilara's home was not a house, but a sanctuary of glass and light, nestled among lush gardens. As the gates slid open, Kale felt he was stepping into a dream. Inside, the air smelled of vanilla and lavender, and every surface gleamed. It was a world away from the cold pavement that had been his bed. Standing on the grand staircase was a little girl with curious eyes. "Mommy, who is that?" she asked, her voice soft. Ilara opened her arms. "Nia, come say hello. This is my friend, Kale. He's going to be staying with us." The girl, Nia, studied him with an unnerving seriousness. "Are you a good person?" Kale felt the question pierce through his carefully constructed walls. He offered a small, sad smile. "I'm trying to be." Nia seemed to accept this, giving a solemn nod. "Then you can stay." Later that night, Ilara joined him on a balcony overlooking the sparkling city. "Now," she said gently, "tell me who you are, Kale. He looked down at his hands, the ring a heavy, foreign weight. He told her everything. His name was Kale Uche. He was once a celebrated data scientist, a husband, and a father to two beautiful children. Life was perfect until the day it wasn't. I had a last-minute project. I was supposed to join them the next day. He paused, swallowing hard. The plane went down. No survivors. I lost everything in a single moment. I just walked away from my life and never looked back. Tears welled in Alara's eyes. I know that pain, she said, her voice breaking. My husband vanished when Neo was just a baby. For years, I waited. I eventually had to accept he was gone. In that shared moment of grief, under the silent stars, two broken souls found an unexpected connection. The next morning, Kale woke to the sound of birdsong, the sunlight streaming through silk curtains, a gentle caress. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming, but the scent of fresh coffee and the softness of the bed were real. Downstairs, Alara was already at the dining table, a laptop open beside her. "Good morning," she said with a warm smile. "You're going to need your strength today." He gave her a questioning look. "Why? Are we going somewhere?" She closed her laptop, her gaze direct and unwavering. "No, you're starting work." Kale nearly choked on his coffee. "Work? Alara, I haven't worked in years. I'm obsolete." "Nonsense," she replied gently. "I didn't propose to you out of sympathy, Kale. I saw a man who spoke about data and business with the fire of an expert. That skill doesn't just disappear. You just need someone to remind you who you are." Later that day, he walked into the glass tower that housed InnovateX. Employees stared, whispering as he walked beside Alara. She led him to a sunlit office on the executive floor. A plaque on the door read, "Kale Uche, Head of Data Intelligence." He froze, overwhelmed. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely," she said. At first, it was a struggle. The software was new, the algorithms more complex. But his instincts, long dormant, began to stir. Within a week, he was seeing patterns no one else had, identifying inefficiencies and proposing solutions that began saving the company millions. One afternoon, Alara walked into his office, a file in her hand. "You just saved us $10 million on the quarterly budget," she said, a quiet pride in her voice. "The board is impressed." Kale looked up, stunned. "I was just doing my job." She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up her whole face. "That's what makes you brilliant." In that moment, a flicker of something long extinguished, hope, began to glow within him once more. Of course. Weeks melted into months. Kale was no longer just surviving. He was thriving. The ghost in the mirror had been replaced by a man who walked with purpose, his eyes shining with renewed life. He led teams, mentored young analysts, and his insights became legendary within InnovateX. But the true transformation was happening after hours, on the quiet balcony overlooking the city where he and Alara would talk for hours. Their conversations, which started with business strategies and data models, soon drifted into dreams, fears, and the quiet spaces of their pasts. The respect they shared in the boardroom blossomed into a deep, unspoken affection under the stars. Laughter, a sound that had long been a stranger to both of them, now filled the spaces between their words. One evening, as a gentle rain pattered against the glass, Alara looked at him, her expression soft. "Kale, why did you say yes that day? At the market?" He chuckled softly. "Honestly? I thought you were completely mad." She laughed, and he continued, his voice growing serious. "But there was something in your eyes. It wasn't pity. It was resolve. I didn't believe it was real, so I gave you an impossible task. I wanted to see if you were serious. I never imagined you would actually kneel." Alara tilted her head. "And now?" He took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. Now I know you weren't an angel, he said, his gaze holding hers. You were a warrior, and you were fighting for both of us. The space between them was no longer filled with words, but with a profound, comforting silence. The man who had lost everything now felt an overwhelming sense of fullness. Cale had regained his purpose and found a home, but more than that, he had found love in its purest form. The ring Ilara had placed on his finger was a symbol of his rescue, but he knew he had to give her one that symbolized his devotion. He wanted to do it the right way, on his own terms. A few days later, during a quiet dinner on the mansion's rooftop balcony, he stood up, his heart pounding. "Ilara?" he said, his voice trembling slightly. She looked up, confused, as he reached into his pocket. Then he knelt. Nia, who was coloring at a small table nearby, gasped softly. Cale held up a simple, elegant platinum ring. "I didn't believe in anything when you found me," he began, his eyes locked on hers. "But you made me believe again. You gave me my life back. You gave me a reason to smile, to be a father again, to love again." Tears welled in Ilara's eyes as he looked up at her, his soul bare. "Now I want to ask you properly. Ilara, the love of my life, will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, a tear tracing a path down her cheek as a radiant smile broke through. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Nia clapped her hands, jumping with joy as Cale slipped the ring on Ilara's finger. The entire house seemed to erupt in a quiet, profound celebration of a love that had risen from the ashes. 2 months later, their wedding was the event of the year. It was an extravagant affair, attended by dignitaries and tech giants from across the globe. The media called it a fairy tale, a story of grace and second chances. But for Cale and Ilara, standing hand in hand, it was simply the quiet, beautiful beginning of the rest of their lives. The years that followed were filled with a deep and abiding peace. Cale, now co-CEO of InnovateX, worked alongside Ilara, their combined vision pushing the company to unprecedented heights. They expanded across the continent, their partnership in business as seamless and powerful as their partnership in life. The world cheered their success, but their greatest achievements were happening far from the boardroom. Their home was a haven of warmth and laughter. Nia, now a bright and joyful girl, flourished under their love. The scars of their past had not vanished, but they had healed, transformed into a shared story of resilience. And just when they thought their hearts couldn't be any fuller, life offered them another miracle. One sunny afternoon, Ilara found Cale in the garden, a gentle smile on her face. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "Our family is growing," she whispered. Cale froze, his eyes widening in disbelief before filling with tears of pure, unadulterated joy. He knelt and pressed his ear to her belly, listening for the faint, promising heartbeat of their new beginning. The pregnancy was a time of profound gratitude. For Ilara, who had once thought she would raise her daughter alone, it was a testament to a future she never dared to dream of. For Cale, who thought he would never be a father again, it was a divine gift, a healing balm on his oldest wound. One afternoon, Cale walked into the kitchen to find Ilara humming softly as she stirred a pot, her baby bump a beautiful curve beneath her blouse. He froze, simply watching her, overwhelmed by the simple, perfect beauty of the moment. She turned, catching his gaze. "What?" "Nothing," he smiled, walking over to wrap his arms around her. "You just look like a dream I never thought I'd have again." She leaned into his embrace, and in that quiet kiss, the world outside disappeared. 2 months later, their son was born. They named him Leo, a name that meant lion, a symbol of the strength and courage that had brought their family together. When Cale held the tiny baby in his arms, he felt a final, broken piece of his soul click back into place. Nia instantly took on her role as big sister with serious dedication. She would read to Leo, rock his cradle, and tell him all about the world he had just entered. Their home, once a quiet sanctuary for 2 lonely souls, was now alive with the vibrant, joyful sounds of a complete and happy family. It was a life neither of them had thought possible, a beautiful dawn after a long and painful night. Years passed, each one a testament to the beautiful life Kale and Alara had built. Their home was a constant buzz of joy, filled with the laughter of their son Leo, a curious and brilliant boy, and the thoughtful presence of Nia, who had grown into a bright, compassionate young woman. The world had watched their love story, but the family they nurtured in private was their true masterpiece. They stood together, beaming with pride, at Nia's university graduation ceremony. At just 18, she was the youngest in her class to graduate as a medical doctor, her mind as sharp as her heart was kind. As they took pictures, a well-dressed young man approached her. "Dr. Nia," he said with a charming smile, "I'm Chidi. Your final presentation on genetic mapping was revolutionary." Nia blushed, thanking him. Kale watched from a distance, a knowing smile playing on his lips, while Alara raised a curious eyebrow. The conversation that started with science soon blossomed into something more. 3 months later, Chidi, the son of a respected judge and a rising star in his own right, came to their home to formally ask for permission to court their daughter. 3 years later, he proposed at Nia's 21st birthday party. She said yes, her voice shaking with excitement. As Kale watched his stepdaughter begin her own journey of love, he felt his life come full circle. He had once lost a family, believing that chapter of his life was over. Now, he stood as the proud patriarch of a family that was not only restored but growing, its roots deep and its branches reaching for the sky. One evening, after dinner, Alara gathered the family in the living room. Her expression was gentle, but held a familiar, determined fire. "I've been thinking," she began, her gaze sweeping over her husband and children. InnovateX has transformed businesses, but it's time to do more. It's time to create something for people like Kale once was. Kale looked at her, his heart swelling with love. He knew exactly what she meant. "I want to launch the Uche Foundation," she said, turning to him. "A place that gives second chances, that finds the forgotten and reminds them they are not worthless. A center that trains and employs the homeless, giving them the skills and dignity they deserve." Kale stared at her, moved beyond words. Nia clapped slowly. "Mom, that's beautiful." "You're naming it after me?" Kale asked, his throat tight with emotion. Alara smiled warmly. "After us. After what you represent. Hope." She turned to their son, Leo, now a teenager already writing code for his own apps. "And one day, this will be part of your story too." Leo grinned. "I'm already designing the website." 3 months later, the Uche Foundation opened its doors. It was a sprawling campus of hope with classrooms, workshops, and counseling centers. It was more than a building, it was a promise. It was a place where stories, once thought to be over, could finally have a new beginning. At the foundation's ribbon-cutting ceremony, Kale stood before a crowd of supporters, dignitaries, and the first group of trainees, their faces etched with a hope he recognized all too well. His voice was steady, filled with a calm power that commanded silence. "My name is Kale Uche," he began. "Once, I lived on the street. I had lost my home, my hope, and my reason to live. I believed I was forgotten by the world and by God." He turned to Alara, who stood beside him, her eyes shining with tears. "But someone saw me. She didn't see a beggar. She knelt before me, not because I was worthy, but because she believed in what I could become." He held up his hands. "She gave me a reason to wake up again. She made me whole." He then gestured to the gleaming new building behind them. "This place is not charity. It is justice. It is a testimony that grace is real, that second chances exist, and that love is not about what you have, but about what you are willing to see in others." As thunderous applause filled the air, the trainees stood there clapping the loudest of all. In that moment, no one saw a billionaire and a former homeless man. They saw two souls who had walked through fire and emerged with a light bright enough to guide others out of the darkness. Years later, Kale and Alara sat on their favorite garden bench, gray now streaking their hair. Their hands, older but still intertwined, rested between them. They watched as their grandchildren played on the lawn, their laughter mingling with the chirping of birds. Nia and Chitty had given them a bright, bubbly granddaughter named Amara, after the woman who started it all. Leo, now a visionary leader at InnovateX, had a young son who had Kale's thoughtful eyes. The garden was full. Their life was full. I used to think God was punishing me, Kale said softly, his gaze on the children. But now, I think maybe he was just preparing me for you. Alara leaned her head on his shoulder. Everything was leading us here, she whispered. Just then, little Amora ran up to them, her hands full of crayon drawings. "Grandma, Grandpa, look what I made," she exclaimed. They took the papers and smiled. It was a sketch of a beautiful woman kneeling before a man on the street. Above it, in big, bubbly letters, she had written, "Love begins where pride ends." Kale stared at it for a long moment, a soft chuckle escaping his lips. She gets it. Alara kissed the girl's forehead. She comes from it. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over their family, Kale held his wife's hand, a feeling of profound peace settling over him. Their incredible journey had started with an impossible question on a dusty street, and it had led to this: a legacy of love, a testament to hope, and a life more beautiful than either of them had ever dared to dream.
If this heart-wrenching emotional story has touched something deep in you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.